Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for this joint webinar on how to navigate your campus's pathway to sustainability. My name is Shelley McCallig. I'm the Director of Member Services at the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities in New York. Unfortunately, my colleague Lonnie James from the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in Ohio currently on an airplane after experiencing some travel delays yesterday, so she's unable to join us. Please allow me to also welcome you on her behalf. She's very sorry to not be with us. Today's webinar is an exciting opportunity to gather members from both our state associations to learn more about the energy sustainability program offered by the Coalition for College Cost Savings, First American Education Finance, Ecosystem Energy Solutions, and Solar Financing Solutions. There's a lot of information to cover and a lot of people you're going to hear from today, so I won't take up any more of our time, but please just thank you again for your time. Now it's my pleasure to hand things over to Coalition President Lyon Cruz, going to provide a little background on the program and then introduce you to the rest of the team. Lyon?
Thank you, Shelley. And let me echo Shelley's sentiments. Thank you to all the participants here today. We value your time and hope you gather information for your campus from our ESP program. You see on your screen the agenda for today. We're going to first talk about the background, how the ESP came to be. I'll introduce you to the ESP team. We'll look at the actual program itself. You'll hear some details about the program. We're going to look at a case study, our first case study, and that's Spelman College. And then we'll answer any questions that may have come up and talk about resources that are available to you. I encourage you during the program today to utilize the chat feature. Please ask any questions that you may have in the chat. We'll either answer those as we go, if appropriate, or we'll save them to the end when we have the question and answer segment of our program. With that, once again, my name is Lyon Cruz. I am the president of the Coalition for College Cost Savings. We just call it the Coalition, much too long a name. We are the only group purchasing organization devoted exclusively to you all, the private, nonprofit higher education campuses across the nation. We come to you exclusively because you are members of your state association, whether that be New York or Ohio. So kudos to both states for partnering with the coalition and bringing these programs to you. The coalition's strategy has long been to look at the large expense items on your P&L and try to assist the college campuses with those large expense items. As you know, energy, the consumption of energy and the use of energy is one of those large expense items. The Coalition ESP program was born because we wanted to assist the college campuses in addressing the large expense item of energy. We realized when we first started looking at the program, we first started by thinking we could help you all purchase energy. But what we found was that you all probably do purchase energy in an efficient manner. Most of the college campuses have figured that out, if you will. But more importantly, we looked at energy as a whole and energy usage and the operations on campus and realized that what we really could help with was a holistic approach to your entire campus. You know, a comprehensive strategy renders greater results. So that's what the ESP does, and you'll hear more about that in a few minutes. We teamed up with First American in the initial stages. First American Education Finance has done this in several instances on campuses before the ESP. We found a great partner in First American. They understand financing these type of projects, and First American and the coalition then started looking to see how we could develop an entire program to offer to the coalition campuses. We realized as First American and the coalition got together, we realized that you'll meet Chad in a minute. Chad and I are finance guys. I'm a CPA, Chad's a finance guy, and we realized we really didn't have the technical expertise to run this program. So we started looking for technical expertise in the market, and we found two great team members in Solar Financial Solutions and Ecosystems. So with that, let me introduce you to the team of the ESP. Again, my name is Lyon Cruz, president of the Coalition for College Cost Savings. We also had Chad Wiedenhofer. Chad, if you want to turn your camera on and just say hello to everyone.
Morning, everyone.
You'll hear a little more from Chad just after I finish. We also have Annie Pike, John Philippe Druid, and Bob Mancini from Ecosystems. If you all want to just open up your camera and just say hello. You're being shy.
Hello.
All right. Well, as I said, we have 4 great partners in the ESP program. Starting at 12 o'clock on this graphic, for program management, we have tapped Solar Financing Solutions. Solar Financing Solutions will manage the entire program. Again, Chad and I are finance guys. We needed someone that understood energy and had the experience and expertise. We found that in Solar Financing Solutions. Couldn't ask for a better partner in financing these projects than First American Education Finance. Like I said, they understand these projects. They understand the ebbs and flows of cash flow, the ebbs and flows of, it may not be cash flow, it may actually be expense reduction. So they understand when a project is going to pay back, and they can structure the financing to take advantage of the project instead of the project trying to take advantage of financing or financing driving the project. So can't say enough about First American and their flexibility in financing these projects. Technical expertise comes from Ecosystems, a great company, long standing in higher ed, assisting campuses in sustainability and driving down cost. Ecosystems has been great to work with, and we continue to see them do great things on our college campuses. And of course, the Coalition for College Cost Savings, the coalition, we are the driver behind all this, bringing it to college campuses through our members, the state associations. So with that introduction, I'd like to hand it off to Chad Wiedenhofer from First American Education Finance and let him explain a little more about the program.
Great, thanks, Lyon. So, hopefully many of you are familiar with First American on some level. As Lyon mentioned, I've been with First American for 19 years. We've always had a deep commitment to higher education, and specifically in the area today that we'll talk about, in this area of energy efficiency or sustainability, or longer term sustainability commitments and plans that higher ed institutions are implementing. This has been really a central area of interest for us on a number of levels. It's an area we've had a lot of experience in. It's an area that our parents in RBC has made deep public commitments around sustainable finance targets. And so it may be a little bit unique to kind of start this conversation on the capital front. But capital is oftentimes a real barrier to the implementation of a lot of these initiatives and goals that institutions have. And so, really our leadership or perspective on this came from the standpoint of how can we assemble, to Lyon's point, a team of resources that provides value and enables institutions to gather information and make the right investments, but then how do we support that from a capital perspective? And so as you look at what that's meant to us at the start of this, I mentioned our parent company in RBC has set sustainable finance capital targets, that obviously being a part of that larger institution, it does flow down to us, and we think about our own commitments and goals in that area. And so central to kind of the capital side of this is a deeper commitment on our part to provide capital to finance sustainable projects, in the sense that there's a carbon reduction element to those projects. So, as you think about energy efficiency, investments in renewables or clean transportation, There's a lot of breadth to what qualifies in terms of those types of projects. And what it does is it enables us to provide some enhancements in terms of what we can offer. All right. If a project has that designation, having these larger commitments behind this has provided a framework and an opportunity to extend capital to projects that without this designation may not have the same eligibility. And so we've always felt that in our role, being an independent capital provider to align with the longer term goals and commitments that institutions have is a real value offering. It allows us to be neutral or agnostic around technologies. It's really about what's best for the institution and what their goals are, and having again kind of an independent capital solution aligned to that has been very beneficial in our experience. It also allows us on the topic of deferred maintenance needs, which is an ever-present topic for many institutions. Finding creative ways to both address the sustainability commitments that a school might have, but bring in more, traditional deferred maintenance related needs that need to be improved, unlocking capital to invest in those needs as well. So how do we get this, momentum, kind of started around this, and again, fostering some initial capital for schools to explore the ESP program? Our thinking on that several months ago was for First American to kind of make an initial investment around grant funding for strategic assessments under the ESP program. So this initial benefit that was available to all coalition members several months back was a grant application to be awarded one of 5 grants for an extensive strategic assessment that would bring in all of the stakeholders on a school campus. So the facilities folks, the sustainability leadership, if there's student organized advocation around these topics, presidents, that certainly the finance, really all of the stakeholders, and certainly we've worked with ecosystems for a long time, their experience and ability to bring those stakeholders together and foster the important conversations that drive long-term goals and priorities, and is kind of the foundation to the strategic assessment project that the grant application and grants that are outlined here. And so the thinking there is to kind of help schools start that process and to provide kind of the supporting grant funding to do that would be a worthwhile investment on the part of First American and really help schools, in support of starting that process. And so, after a few months of grant applications, I think we had a little over 20 applications for the program. We had the 5 schools that you see here be the initial recipients of those grants. Not an insignificant, in terms of the value. Typically, it's about a $50,000 cost in terms of the strategic assessment. They're on campus, reviewing facilities. There's a lot that goes into these assessments, and there's a lot of information and value in terms of the output to help schools start to kind of navigate long-term, again, kind of sustainability goals and plans. We'll talk more in Spelman kind of about that story as kind of a case study of the process, so everyone can kind of get some insight into the output of that and what the benefit was. But we're certainly excited about this initial first year in this process, and again, what we think the outcomes will be for these schools that are participating. Again, a lot of value, a lot of benefit that we've already seen. And we're still in the very early phases. All of these schools have kicked off, kind of their assessment process. There's, from a timing standpoint, some are further along than others, but we're already seeing, a lot of great benefit here. So that's a quick overview. Before I turn it over, I thought it'd be helpful just to kind of, as we look at, this first question here, assess the attendees here today in terms of where the group's at and the audience is at on kind of meeting your energy conservation and decarbonization goals. So if everyone can take a minute and respond to this, we'll share the results once we have that. All right. If we can see the results. So pretty good mix as we look at the responses here. Pretty diversified here. So a few contemplating, a few actively planning, some stalled or delayed, and so not uncommon to kind of see a pretty good mix in responses there. As we look at the next question here, before I turn it over, which of these is the greatest challenges to achieving your energy conservation and decarbonization goals? And we can share the results on this question with the group. Great. So yeah, again, kind of a mix. And again, I think that's one of the primary objectives for the ESP team is to really, again, every institution probably on some level has challenges in these areas, whether it's the technology, whether it's the capital and funding side, or whether it's the planning and scoping. We've got a balance of responses here. That's part of the objective, I think, when we set out with the ESP program is to provide value and resources in each of these areas. So thanks for everyone responding to that. With that, I'll turn it over to, again, kind of the technical experts as it relates to that last question, and Bob Mancini and Ecosystems. Bob?
Thank you, Chad. In this section, so I'm going to go through this 10, 12 slides that are meant to help frame up the ESP, the Energy Sustainability Program, just to help give you a better understanding of how this all could fit in for your program, for advancing some of your initiatives around energy and sustainability. I think Annie will bring it home with a real live example with what we've done at Spelman. So you'll get a better chance of getting an understanding of how this all fits and how it could apply to your campus. So in this section, I'll go through get into some more of the details of the ESP, how it might help your campus, and share some information on about the value ecosystem might be able to bring for your campus as well. So the program goals in the ESP, and Lion touched on this a little bit, the overarching goal is to help member schools assess, build, and advance their energy sustainability program by addressing these main 4 categories. There are others, but in our experience, decarbonization, tackling the combination of goals around decarbonization, energy operating expenses, resiliency or business continuity, and asset renewal, deferred maintenance, addressing that the aging infrastructure on campuses. These seem to be the top topics that we are called to address at different campuses. So at a high level, our services are broken out into 2 major categories: planning and projects. And under projects, it's development, implementation, and financing. Under planning, I won't go into all the details on this. I think you could use this information will be available for each of you, and I think this could be a good slide to use as a tool if you're thinking it in terms of like planning and projects is like a checklist. So under planning, here's a closer look at some of the most common challenges we're asked to help with. And then under projects, you'll find a list of the most common types of energy conservation or decarbonization projects that we work on at different campuses. And some of these are outcomes under project, like EUR reduction is an outcome a campus might want to have. And the same for improving resiliency and comfort. What's important about this slide and the program is that our most successful projects are informed by really good planning. So we like to spend a lot of time up front. Those first 2 bullets, stakeholder engagement and strategic project-oriented assessments, go hand in hand. So we like to get all of the stakeholders around the table and build that alignment around the consensus around the most important outcomes that a project like this should solve for. Campuses right now are challenged with resources, whether that's financial or personnel. And so developing a project that accomplishes multiple outcomes and addresses multiple goals and initiatives is extremely important now, to really get more for your dollar. Master planning and peer reviews are things that we can do, we can help with. And then we also, again, we're finding that a lot of campuses, because finances are tight and there's a lot of competing interest for projects like this, large deep dive projects, we're finding that campuses are moving away from lowest initial costs and they're moving more towards best long-term value. So helping the decision makers, the stakeholders, kind of get their mind around and think through project development approaches and project delivery methods and project analysis around like a life cycle calculator, best NPV type of assessments are other things that we're helping with. The three main categories for who this program will benefit there are three. So those who have always wanted a strategic assessment, those who have a strategic assessment and are stalled, and those who are ready to begin implementing projects. If you have a campus that has already gone through this, or you're at the tail end of it, there's probably less value that we can help you with. We could still help if you want to reach out, but these are really the three main categories for how we can help, who we can help. Ecosystem, why ecosystem? How do we fit into this? Ecosystem was founded 31 years ago with two main beliefs. The first is that everything can and should be more efficient. And the second is that the construction and engineering companies should be held accountable for the results they promise. So accountability for delivering outstanding results is extremely important to us. We believe the person or the company that came up with the great idea should be there in the end to make sure that that great idea actually works. And so for that, we act as a single point of contact for our customers. So we're an integrated planning, design, and construction company. And so we will see the project through the initial planning stage all the way through to commissioning and then guarantee the results. We've done a lot of projects. We've been in a lot of live buildings on campuses and have saved a lot of money for our clients. So this is I won't spend too much time on this slide. We take a holistic approach when it comes to assessing projects on your campus. We look at it as an entire energy ecosystem. So very few times will we ever want to come in and just replace a boiler or a chiller one for one. What we like to do is we like to take a look at the systems within that building or within a cluster of buildings or on the entire campus to see how that ecosystem interacts with the different units. So we find that we can drive a lot more efficiency and better results by looking at things more holistically. And on this diagram, you'll see some of the categories, the different types of projects our solutions address. So collaboration is one of the key cornerstones for each successful project. And by collaboration, we mean internally and externally. So not only between ecosystem and our client, but also internally at our client level. So it's extremely important. What we're finding, again, is it's extremely important to get all the different inputs from all of the major stakeholder groups, whether it's the board of trustees, the president, the finance department, procurement, facilities, energy, sustainability. So getting their input, everyone's input on a project like this, which is typically not a nice to have, they're turning into must-haves. Presidents have agreed to commit to some level of sustainability goal and have signed off on it. And so at this point in project work on campuses, it's the project, as you're getting further down that goal towards the finish line, projects seem to get more expensive and paybacks are longer. And so getting that collaboration in place across all major stakeholder groups to identify and agree on the most important outcomes these projects should solve for is extremely important. Our projects focus on the most important outcomes, and it's usually a combination of these categories here. So aging infrastructure, modernizing equipment, is lists and lists of deferred maintenance or assets that are near the end of their useful life, meeting or exceeding environmental targets, and that could be greenhouse gas emissions, water reduction. Enhancing the student experience is extremely important, especially as campuses compete for enrollment. Securing resiliency is important, that business continuity piece. Maximizing energy performance, that is really applicable to CapEx and OpEx. So reducing coming up with the best design solution for the project to actually reduce the capital expense associated with that, and then doing it in a way that maximizes energy conservation. So you're reducing your OpEx, your operating expense. Simplifying operations and maintenance, improving comfort is very important. And then maximizing, I skipped over maximizing financial performance. That could be a category, again, around cost savings. It could be doing a project or defining a project within a specific payback. It could be incorporating deferred maintenance in asset renewal budgets in with the project. So it's more thought out and well planned, and includes money that was going to be spent anyway in a more intelligent way. And then maximizing utility incentives, state incentives, and federal incentives, namely the IRA. Here's just another way of looking at how we think about achieving multiple outcomes for the same money spent. Most campuses have a defined capital budget or deferred maintenance budget. And so if we could allocate that during the planning process to accomplish other goals, we love it when we can get that overlap to be as big as possible. Now for just a couple of slides on the strategic assessment. We have one slide, one poll left, I'm sorry. Here we go. Have you completed some level of strategic assessment for energy conservation and decarbonization on your campus? You could take a minute to answer this, that'll be helpful. Okay, interesting. Okay, good. Couple slides before handing it over to Annie. So the strategic assessment, the four main parts of the strategic assessment are engagement and alignment, and that's with the stakeholder groups. Education, so we'll become educated on your campus, and we'll also help educate with what we're finding on other campuses, best practices, and how it could apply for your campuses, for solutions on your campus. Clarity around most important outcomes, and then we will help build you a strategic and actionable roadmap, which we find to be very important. A lot of studies and assessments we find are just kind of static, and we like to make sure they're actionable and strategic. Final slide before getting into the case study with Spelman. So just drilling down a little bit on the process. We will meet with the stakeholders and conduct the framing goal meeting. So we can walk you through that during the framing goal, during the stakeholder meeting. So this is very important again for figuring out that alignment and consensus around most important outcomes. We'll complete an energy and sustainability diagnostic, identify potential strategies and pathways with high-level financial and performance estimates. This is really important. We can come up with a few different scenarios that we can talk through and talk about to make sure we're addressing some of those most important outcomes. And then the implications of if we do it this way, then here's the path you're looking at afterward. And then together we can determine the best path. Thank you for your time. Now we'll hand it over to Annie, and she can take us through the Spelman College case study for an assessment we just completed for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.
So yeah, we wanted to go through a bit of a case study to give you some more tangible insight into what the strategic assessment could look like for your campus. So Spelman College was one of the initial grant recipients, and we recently have completed their assessment. So Spelman College, just a bit of background, they're a historically Black women's liberal arts college in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a fairly small college, 2,400 students. They have 25 buildings on their campus, an average age of around 70 years. Right now, their kind of original heating network on campus is steam. They're gradually making the transition to hot water. So some of their newer and more recently retrofitted buildings have hot water service. And while doing that, they've been extending the chilled water network as well. One thing that's kind of interesting, their central plant is not owned solely by Spelman, so they co-own it with a neighboring school, the Clark Atlanta University, and that plant also produces steam for a third neighbor, Morehouse College. So throughout this assessment, I had the pleasure of working with Art Fraser, who is their Director of Facilities Management and Services. Art was a really fun guy to work with, kind of an ideal champion for this type of program, just based on the breadth of experience he had in their facilities department, as well as their Sustainable Spelman co-chair. So a lot of, expertise on those two facets of what we try to include in this program. And I'm including this picture here because this is what I saw right as I walked into his office. It kind of paints the picture of who Art is. He's, very motivated to have a high-performing facilities team, really reliable systems, and also very passionate about the sustainability aspect. And finally, a great leader and a really good people person. And all of these factors were, extremely important in how successful this study was. So I just wanted to shed some light on that. After we met with Art, we had a sort of a bigger stakeholder meeting, as Bob had mentioned. And this is where we heard from a few other people in the facilities and sustainability teams, as well as finance and procurement. We had their CFO in there, and some of the third-party contractors on the campus, including the plant engineer and their energy management group. So Spelman has signed on to the President's climate commitment. They committed to a carbon neutral goal by 2056 back in 2013. At that time, they created a really solid climate action plan. It was well thought out, and they started making a lot of progress on decarbonization from, the low-hanging fruit around their campus back then. In more recent years, there's been changes of leadership over that time. We had the COVID pandemic, and essentially the progress has kind of slowed down a bit. And what we heard in our stakeholder meeting is, it's not that all of these different stakeholders don't care about the sustainability, but they no longer had the idea of sort of the direction of the campus. It wasn't as front of mind for everyone. So a big thing that came out of that meeting was that, the stakeholders are wanting to realign on these sustainability goals and get something solid established. A few other things that we heard from the CFO, she was mentioning that they don't really have a way to measure and demonstrate the impact of the sustainability initiatives that they are doing. So they were looking for ways to do that. Some of the outcomes they were looking for: water conservation, obviously in terms of sustainability, but also the cost of water in Atlanta is quite high. So this was a major factor in their OPEX expenditure, so looking to conserve water. Their procurement lead actually brought up how they could be smarter about asset renewal. So, when they're looking to replace a large asset like a boiler or a chiller, could they kind of think about the future, think a little bit more long-term, achieve multiple outcomes with that, and instead of just doing a one-for-one replacement. We think that's a brilliant idea. We love to do that. It was mentioned that they want to take advantage of any tax credits or incentives that are available, and all in the interest of remaining affordable for their student demographic. So once we had an idea of the kind of stakeholders' priorities, we took a walk around the campus with Art. It was very standard for a university campus. There's a lot of deferred maintenance needs scattered around in different buildings. Just small things that are easy to fall to the wayside when bigger priorities exist. They are in the process, as I mentioned, of converting from a steam network to a hot water network. And what you can see in this picture here is just some of the steam leaks that they have around the campus. I always find it interesting. You see these kind of things right next to, a LEED certified building, because one of those things is a lot more, prettier to an investor to invest in. We also saw their science building, which has 2 large chillers, which are coming to the end of life. One of which is still working fine, but we don't know when catastrophic failure could happen. And the other one already leaking, they're already having trouble trying to manage it. And finally, their Art talked about 2 residence halls that are upcoming, going to be built this summer. So with all of that information on the campus, we dove into our kind of data-driven energy diagnostic. I won't go into a ton of detail here, but the few things that we did try to point out for them was just how much they are spending on the losses in that steam network. So really to support that idea of switching over to hot water, as you can see in this graphic, that top bar, the natural gas goes into about 50% actual building heating loads, and then another 50% losses. So really kind of quantifying just how much that hot water conversion could save for them. We also looked at all of the buildings across campus and what kind of energy use intensity they each have, and identifying the potential for reducing that energy use. And we then kind of translated that into a GHG emission reduction potential. And what we can see here is that science center where those 2 chillers are needing to be replaced is actually one of the biggest offenders on campus. It has the biggest potential for reduction. So we wanted to dive a little further into that and look at those loads that are in that science building. What we found was that because that building has lots of fresh air and heating loads all year round, they actually have the potential to do some heat recovery and cover their heating loads with the heat rejected from chillers. That just requires a different technology and a little bit of advanced planning when doing that retrofit. So from all of that information that we were able to gather and the analysis that we did, we came up with 3 strong recommendations for the campus. As we talked about, this steam to hot water conversion that they are doing is extremely important. It's going to save them a lot on their OpEx expenditure, operating expenditures, and also make a big dent in those emissions. But we did notice a few things that could be improved in the current planning that they have. So we had spoken with some of the engineers who were responsible for, creating the plan for their steam to hot water conversion. And we noticed that there wasn't a priority on lowering hot water temperatures just yet. And what we wanted to point out is that, bringing those temperatures down would actually allow them to have much more potential for decarbonization in the future because of how much better a lower temperature can work with electrifying heating. And within that vein, there were also a lot of opportunities for immediate savings from doing that temperature lowering, just from how the hot water network is operating right now and how they could control that temperature at the plant. We also gave them a few recommendations for things they should consider in their new buildings and pipe infrastructure, just technically to improve that, future-proofing and enabling of decarbonization in the future. As I mentioned, we saw a lot of deferred maintenance needs around the campus as we went through. The problem with those kind of things, even though they can overlap with a lot of energy efficiency, potential, it can be difficult to, do those things on a one-by-one basis with any sort of engineering energy efficiency program. So what we recommended to them was that they look at their buildings in a more holistic way and develop some sort of building energy use intensity reduction program. This way they'd be able to use those deferred maintenance budgets that would go to kind of the deferred maintenance issues, use those more strategically so that they're getting decarbonization outcomes as well as the other outcomes we covered in that stakeholder meeting. And finally, on that point, we offered them the option of using a cost of decarbonization metric, which would allow them to kind of compare these projects on a basis that's not just the financial or OpEx and CapEx totals, but actually bring in some value on the cost of decarbonization. So we kind of equip them with the tools for being able to do that. And then finally, going back to that science center and the chillers requiring replacement, we recommended that they include a heat recovery chiller within that upgrade to the system in order to save on some of their energy costs there. So this is an opportunity that they had to do some of that smart asset renewal their procurement lead was talking about, rather than replacing their chiller one for one, continuing to reject heat into the environment through a cooling tower and having a lot of evaporation losses, water losses through that cooling tower. You can put in this heat recovery chiller, reject that heat into your heating loop and use it efficiently, make use of all of the energy that you're paying for there. And in addition, it's a closed system, so they're saving more water in the process. So as a whole, the 3 recommendations that we made to Spelman would achieve 22% GHG emissions reductions, which actually got them to kind of the interim goal that they had for carbon neutrality. It also, because we were giving them, order of magnitude cost estimates for CapEx and OpEx, it gave them a better understanding of just what kind of investment was going to be required to meet those goals that they had set for themselves. In addition to that, we were able to, check off a lot of boxes on those other priorities that they had brought up in the stakeholder meeting. So all 3 of those options are going to save a lot of water and address a lot of deferred maintenance. With the heat recovery chiller option, we were also able to improve the resiliency of that system. The EUI reduction program and steam to hot water conversion is going to improve the comfort and safety of occupants of the campus. And finally, as I mentioned before, that steam to hot water conversion is going to enable, further decarbonization of the campus, the use of more heat pumps in the future. So now we're about a month on from presenting those final recommendations. And we have exciting news in that Spelman is pursuing a lot of these options. They're particularly excited about that heat recovery chiller, looking to get funding to implement that as soon as possible. They're also taking those recommendations on lowering their campus hot water temperature and reviewing that with their engineers to ensure that that's implemented for the upcoming construction of the new residence buildings, as well as the extension of the hot water network for them. And within that, they're also exploring the plant hot water temperature reduction. So I just want to, reiterate that a lot of the success of this assessment did have to do with having a very active champion from the school. Art, he was motivated to get people involved. He already had very good relationships with the finance office and was, very passionate about making sure that we got what we needed to help deliver the best outcomes for the campus. And in addition, having the facilities and sustainability roles together was very useful, but at another campus that could be two separate people, but we just want to highlight how important that level of communication would be. So I'll hand it back over to Bob to close things off, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Annie. We're coming up on to the top of the hour. Are there any questions? I didn't see any questions. Okay, so I want to thank Lion and Chad for putting this very important program together. It's extremely important. Energy and sustainability initiatives are extremely important, complicated, and expensive, or can be expensive. And so coming up with a team like this, we're thrilled to be on it. And as a team, we're very passionate about helping campuses think through the complexity and sorting it all out. There's a lot of variables, and we're really passionate about getting all those pieces to the puzzle out on the table and thinking through and coming up with the best, most strategic, most actionable, and integrated pathway for our clients. And so champions wanted, whether it's one or a team of champions on campus, we're happy to help. So however we can be of service, please reach out. I included this. You'll have access to this presentation, so I put this slide back in near the end just as more of a checklist for you to think about where some of the topics that you might need some support with. There's a QR code that will take you to the program webpage for additional information. There's contact information here. Big thank you for putting this together, Shelley and Monty. Thank you for driving the value for your clients. And we appreciate your time today. Thank you.